formatted in an absolutely atrocious way. People usually shy away from so many questions, but obviously you don't want to be doing that. Otherwise, why would they pick you? It went from I am definitely not calling this candidate to, okay, maybe this candidate is worth talking to. I'm getting too excited. I am very excited today to be finally doing something that I really wanted to do for a long time. I found one of my very old resumes or CVs and I'm gonna review it. I think I used this one when I was trying to apply to my first job, which ended up being a software engineering position in Schrödinger, working on the live design product, which was my absolute dream company. And I actually was lucky enough to get into that job. But I'm gonna look at my resume. I'm gonna fix it. Also, I found almost exactly the same position open right now on Schrödinger's website. So we're gonna also try to see whether we can tailor this new resume for that job. This is meant to serve as an example of how your resume can probably improve. I'm gonna put myself under the bus. I didn't look too deeply into it yet, but this resume is definitely not what I would like to have, especially if I was a new grad trying to do the same thing in this very tough job market. So, first thing I like to do when I review resumes is just to get an overall idea of what's on here. So if you look at the resume, you see that, I have an acceptable font, I have sections and stuff, so this is not terrible. But if you scroll, you're gonna see I have research experience and teaching experience, headers, but I'm applying for a software engineering job, which is kind of not a great match on first glance, especially considering that there will be so many other candidates who have better matches. And if you scroll down even further, I have a giant section for activities and leadership. I don't know how related that will actually be, will look. I have volunteer experience, and I am going over to 3 pages, and this resume is formatted in an absolutely atrocious way. Why am I using a 3rd page? Why is there only 1 bullet point in that page? So many questions, but obviously you don't want to be doing that. I'm using a lot of useless space. The bullet points have a lot of space between them that's really not adding a lot of value. I have projects that I listed, but I'm not really giving a lot of detail, so they're not really that impactful. This relevant coursework section is a little too giant. First of all, with the goal in mind that I am a new grad, I'm graduating in May 2021, and I want a software engineering job. So with that in mind, I would like to first tweak my experience to reflect software engineering, coding experience. So the first thing that I'm seeing here is I have, as I pointed out, a research experience section and a teaching experience section. An important thing to think about, both for applicant tracking system optimization and for actually humans to read this, is you need to match the job description, right? You need to match the job. Otherwise, why would they pick you over so many other people that they have in their database, right? So I need to make sure that I am highlighting software engineer wherever I can, instead of teaching or research. I remember that one of the reasons why I separated research experience and teaching experience instead of keeping it strictly chronological, reverse chronological order, is because I wanted some of my coding experience that was later than the teaching experience to appear in the front. So I did this clever thing of separating them, which is fine. So you can definitely do that. If the reverse chronological order buries some of the positions that you want at the top, you can definitely separate them into categories like this. But I want the research experience section to say maybe technical experience, right? To reflect that these are software engineering. I should have knocked my phone down. I'm getting too excited. These are software engineering experiences, right? I am going to look at the titles. So one thing that people usually shy away from doing is modifying their titles on the resume. And I appreciate that, right? You don't want to lie on your resume, right? You want to be honest. You want to be truthful on your resume. I also have seen my fair share of people who lie on their resume, and absolutely do not do that. It will be quite easy to figure out that you lied. The interviewer is a decent interviewer, so do not do that. But we are allowed to change names of titles if they're still truthful. For example, I was a research assistant in both of these positions that you see under now technical experience. They were research assistant positions because they were paid by the college, but we were really doing a coding or machine learning internship. It was just in more a research context, but the work would be the same thing you would do in an internship. So I'm going to try to change these titles to reflect that a little bit more. So instead of research assistant, maybe let's play with machine learning, maybe let's just say intern, and maybe we can say like emphasize the name of the lab instead of repeating the college. Already, by adding the word intern, we're making this match closer to a job description that would, let's say, want internship experience over like research experience, right? Because this more truthfully reflects what it is that I actually did there. And we're not lying about where we did this. We're not lying about when we did it. We're gonna lie about what we did. We can provide some clarity by using titles that reflect what we do better. We can do a similar thing for this one. It's not giving a lot of information about what I did. So again, I'm inclined to say like software engineer intern. I'm gonna call it Grace Lab. Because it was a lab of one of my professors who came up with his own language to teach computer science easier. It was basically a language that made teaching computer science easier, but it was a literal programming language that had static typing and all of that, right? So we were really doing software engineering at that point. So what we have done so far is we have changed this title to express more of a technical background, and then we have played with some of the titles of the actual positions to match them closer to what we did and match them closer to where we want to get to. I am after a software engineering internship, right? I really want to experiment with making these bullet points not absolutely freaking giant, and if I can manage that, I will be very happy. Why is that a square? I don't know. Biology department and the internship or research I did there doesn't really fit the technical experience section. So maybe we should play around with taking this out of here, maybe fitting it here. So now maybe I can say teaching and research experience here. So I'm preserving all the content, but I have done my best to put the technical stuff at the top with an emphasis on how they're related to coding and software and machine learning. So my resume has more focus on computer science now than molecular biology, which is what I want because I'm applying for a software engineering role, not a biology lab position. The fact that I did molecular biology is just gonna be like a flavor on the top, not like a main point in my resume. Okay, let's keep making even more space. Maybe let's delete all of this, do something like this. So now we have more space. The skills section is definitely not where it's supposed to be. It doesn't really have much detail at all. It just has Python and Java. I'm wondering whether we can make that better, especially considering that I remember using a lot of Python libraries and stuff. I bet we can add those. This activities and leadership section this is actually a pretty cool project that I can maybe talk about at another time, but this is basically a project where I was doing art with biology. Like I was collecting bacteria from people and creating art with it. Pretty cool. But do I want this inside my resume? And I don't think it should be there. So this might be a tough moment for people who think that their resume should reflect, who they are and all of the good things about themselves. But we only have 2 pages. And this is definitely not the most important thing in my resume. So I'm actually gonna delete this. And already I can see we're easily gonna fit into 2 pages. And now I can use all that space that I have to add more details with the bullet points, right? I can't believe I ever sent this to anybody. And I can't believe that I actually managed to get a job with this, but these are the bullet points that are gonna get me the farthest probably, because those are the 2 internships that I have. If you look at them, especially the last one, they're incredibly small. I only have 2 bullet points here. I'm not really saying much. What is it that I did? I'm saying debugged and maintained the static typing system of a programming language called Grace. I'm not saying anything about what I debugged. I'm not saying anything about what I maintained, like what I added. I'm actually saying nothing here. And since this was 6 years ago, I don't really remember what I did, but I remember us debugging and implementing features into the static typing system. So I guess I will need to make up something here. Debug the type inheritance module, which was failing like 22% of the type inheritance cases. I didn't only debug the whole static typing system of a huge language. I looked at the type inheritance section of it. I looked into the edge cases that were breaking 22% of those type inheritance scenarios. So we're talking about something that's a lot more concrete. I would like to make this bullet point even more concrete, but I would, need to either remember or for the purposes of this video, make it up. Maybe we made inheritance better. Maybe we supported some special edge cases that weren't supported before, But you gotta make sure that they're here instead of giving very general, very hand-wavy explanations. And even 6 years later, I remember a lot of things here that I didn't write. Like, I remember that I collaborated with 2 labs in 2 other universities to make this happen, including, I don't know, like 4 students and 3 professors or something like that. I remember we wrote make files to run certain things. I remember we were on GitHub. We had some GitHub processes that we implemented. I'm blanking on the details, but you can see how much I can add here. I remember us being on the whiteboard and designing stuff and considering different options. So all of that could have been here, but it's not, right? So it's very important to look at your bullet points, especially the most important positions, and make sure that they actually reflect the important things that you did in a concrete manner that's hopefully also quantifiable, like how I said 22% here. And a good way to get that might be, like you have known cases that doesn't work, or you have unit tests and 22% of them fail, stuff like that. And you can also get good numbers by specifying who you collaborated with, how many universities, how many other students. Also, maybe it would be nice to even get more data about how many people use this coding language. Like I gave a little bit of detail here saying that it's used in Pomona College and some other colleges, but it would be nice to say how many colleges, how many students, how many professors, just to give the scale of what this language is actually involved in and how large it is. So much that can be said that is not said here. So that's a bummer. It definitely decreases the impact that this opportunity could have had on my resume. Looking at the top one, I see that these bullet points are a little bit better. There's a little bit more detail here, so let's read one of these. Debug, maintain, and extend the existing unit image segmentation model. So here, again, what did we debug? What did we improve? What did we do to extend it, right? What did maintaining involve? Was it like 82% accurate and I made it 87% accurate? Also, there are a few pieces of information that I think would be very useful here that's not here at all. For example, so many little things. Like I was using Jupyter notebooks. I was connecting to remote computing resources. I was using a lot of, Linux, I believe, and none of that is really reflected here. Yeah, I guess I'm saying this here, but it's also kind of hard to determine like what it is that I was trying to do. Okay, you're labeling these elements and then you're training this model, but for what? I think this explanation of the plan to use it for a semi-automated user interface segmentation system to actually have an agent play the video games in the future, it's just a component of it, right? Because if you can think of an AI agent that will play the game, the AI agent needs to know what's on the screen, right? So this was that part. Like, can we look at a game screen and can we decipher which parts of the screen is actually, like the graphics and the background, and what is like a text box for a user to see, right? But that is not really expressed here. Also, I'm not really talking about why it was promising. Like, just saying obtaining promising results doesn't mean anything. Like, I could have quantified this saying stuff like, it identifies like 97% of text boxes in these games in this category, right? But I'm not quantifying it in any way. So this doesn't really give me any understanding of where the UNet model was before I took over, what changes I made, and what the final result was. And I do remember this was actually quite cool, because I do remember being very close to writing a paper about this that could potentially be published somewhere. So I did really do a lot here, but none of it is shining through, and even I don't remember what I did. Maybe let's look at the project section. I see a lot of, so this one and the bottom one are AI and ML related projects, if I remember them correctly. So, program that takes in user rating information and predicts how users would rate items they have not rated before. This is okay, but again, it's not really impactful, because I'm not saying anything about which language I used to build it, whether someone used it, what's the success rate. Like, I didn't give any information that makes it more impressive than just, a one-day project. And maybe one of the reasons why is that this probably was a one-day project. None of these projects are really like front-end, back-end database, like complete stuff that I could have collaborated with other people with, stuff that my friends or family could have used. So these are small things that I did as part of classes probably that didn't really hold a lot of weight. So it kind of doesn't even make sense that they are on here. I think I only put them here because, I'm an intern and I don't know much yet, and I haven't done much yet, right? But it's always worth thinking, if you can have two projects that are really impactful and really show initiative and really show technical depth and it really shows like collaboration with other people and maybe having some users and interacting with them, those two projects deserve their own bullet points. Like they can have their own bullet points like these ones. I think we're ready to maybe look at a job description and see how we can fit the elements of that job description into this resume, right? And hopefully maybe we can also improve some of these bullet points as we go. I'm gonna take these projects below all of this experience because frankly, I don't think it's very impactful. Cool, so let's look at this job opportunity. This is very funny because I literally was a software engineer in live design. That was my first job out of college, and that resume probably got me this job. From the get-go, I'm seeing a computer science with an interest in chemistry, physics, or biology. This will help a lot because I have biology and chemistry keywords all over my resume because of like the biology research experience, the fact that I have a bachelor's in molecular biology. I probably TA'd a chemistry class, right? They're all in there, so that's great. So there's a bit about best engineering practices. Maybe this is something that we can weave into some of our bullet points. Collaborate closely with a cross-functional agile team. So we are already seeing this action verb, collaborate. We definitely should have a collaborate word in our resume, right? Because if ATS tries to match this job description to our resume, afterwards is probably a good place to start. So if you go back and look at collaborate, I actually just put this in, right? This wasn't here before. I just put this in and we can already see that this will probably increase our match score to this particular job opportunity. I think I also collaborated with lab mates in this lab too. And I also even remember mentoring people to actually onboard to this lab. So I think maybe we can add something here along the lines of collaborated and mentored like 3 other students, onboarding them to the remote computers and best lab practices. First of all, this became more human readable because a recruiter can look at this and be like, okay, this lab probably had like 10 people, so 3 people joined, she mentored, like how awesome. We put in the collaboration word in here, which will increase the matching score to the job description that we're working with. I also kind of squeezed in best lab engineering practices. So these best engineering practices can play into, you know, the keyword that we saw here, right? So you can see how with one bullet point, I kind of pulled in multiple things and like mushed them into one bullet point. That is not a lie, that is truthful, but it shows why I am a good match for this job. I know that I'm collaborative, right? I know what I did, I know who I am, but I need to put that back into the resume so they can also read and understand why I will be good at this. Design, build, and test. So one word that we have here that we don't have in my resume right now is design. And if you remember, as I was looking at this, I said, here in the Grace lab, I think I could have said something about, you know, designing. So I'm pretty sure we whiteboarded stuff and I'm pretty sure that we designed certain things. I don't know what it was though. So I'm gonna need to make something up if I was doing this at the right time, like 5 years ago, I would have definitely remembered it. So if I was doing this at the right time, like 5 years ago, I would have definitely remembered it. Designed a new, like diamond inheritance resolver for the static typing module. You know, like I can tell a little bit more about what I designed. I can tell a little bit more about whether I collaborated with other people to design it and stuff like that. But now I'm putting in the word design, which not only makes my bullet points look more impactful because I had forgotten to write this in, right? But also now I'm matching this job so much better. Build and test high performance. I don't remember how I tested and evaluated these models, but I remember building something to test them. So you can talk about how you build a testing infrastructure to test your models, right? Even if it's a simple infrastructure, a few scripts, it's still something that you built, that you've designed. So it will be worthy to include it here. We have, you know, large scale computation, distributed components. If you have any experience with doing that, and if you haven't put it in, you can again go back and add some of these details. These are high, large scale computation related stuff, but I didn't really do that in my research internship situations. So I don't think I have much to add. If you were in any code reviews, which I remember doing code reviews for both of those research assistant positions slash internship positions, but I did not put those in, right? I could have given numbers of how many code reviews I reviewed, how many code reviews I did, how many people reviewed my code reviews. I could have quantified that so easily. I don't remember that now, obviously, but code reviews were definitely something that I did and could have mentioned and have not mentioned at all. So source control, I can talk about how we had a Git process in my first internship. I didn't hear. I could have talked about how many repositories we worked with, how many people contributed to those repositories. Again, GitHub would have been so easy to put in there. Speaking of, we're starting to see some technical skills that we can just add here because we have them. We just haven't spelled them out, and we're seeing it in the job description, right? So now I can go back and put those technical skills in. Linux, I definitely used. We can definitely go back and add, Linux here. Let's see what else. Maybe I had experience with Spark. I don't remember, but again, I can sprinkle that in. Log processing and data analysis, I can definitely find something in this position, which was machine learning and looking at user interface elements, labeling them. I can talk about how I created data pipelines to analyze those different images and like masks and all of that, right? I can definitely build these keywords into this job description, 100%. So we went through this whole thing and we found a lot of things that we actually are matching with. And if we highlight those things, we not only match this job description better, but we're starting to have an overall better resume. That's kind of the routine that I would have performed if I knew what I know now when I was 21 years old, trying to apply for my first job. Now, obviously, this is not complete. Obviously, we need to look at all of these in more detail to figure out whether we still agree with those bullet points, whether they're expressed in the right way, quantified in the right way, whether we have missed to add anything. I might actually do that fully and share the before and after somewhere, but I hope that me walking you through my thought process was helpful. Yeah, scanning this already looks much better. It went from, I am definitely not calling this candidate, to, okay, maybe this candidate is worth talking to. And we didn't even spend that much time on it. So yeah, let me know what you think. I hope this was helpful. You can use the same principles to look at your resume again and reference the job description to see whether you can make it a tiny bit better and a tighter fit to the jobs that you're applying for. Yeah, let me know if you have any questions. I hope this was helpful.